Hey everyone, I'm Lindsay Hoffman and welcome to the Dose of Bliss show. If you're new to my channel, don't forget to subscribe. Today's episode, we're talking all about how you can overcome trauma and still thrive, and I have the perfect guest to help you. Today I have professional track and field athlete and author of Good Morning Superstar, where intentions set the tone but habits align you to shine, Stephen Benedict. Stephen, thank you for being here today.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much for having me, guys.
I'm so excited for you to be here because, you know, trauma is something a lot of people experience, and it's something that doesn't necessarily go away. You have to learn how to deal and to thrive. And, today you're a track star, you're an author, but I know you experienced a lot of trauma growing up. It's amazing where you are today. So I wanted to start with sharing your journey and where you started.
Mm. Yeah, it's definitely been a roller coaster of a ride. Hasn't been a very smooth ride, but I think that's really what has built a lot of the characteristics and resilience that I've been able to develop along the way. But in answering your question, yeah, my journey started. I was put into foster care at 4 months, and then due to neglect and just unstable situations with my mother, and then I was put back into her hands. Not too long after that, my brother was born, uh, and we're 2.5 years apart, and we were living in and out of motel rooms, very unstable situation, not a lot of provision, not a lot of protection. My mother had a boyfriend at the time who saw fit to pretty much lay his hands on us whenever it was feasible for him to let out his emotions and all of his torment. Um, after a pretty long period of time of this, my grandparents found out about it and they tried to take us in for a short period of time, but them being the ages of elderly, they couldn't take care of two toddlers at that time. It was just unfeasible and unsustainable. So we went back into foster care for about another 6 years, bounced up and down around the East Coast, then finally landed into a foster home for about the last 3 years of our foster care system experience. And then we transitioned, and we were both lucky enough to be adopted together by two great individuals. My mother was a second grade teacher, and my father ex-Vietnam, and then went to work for Merrill Lynch in New York Stock Exchange. They're amazing. They exposed us and opened the doors for a second chance at life for us, and exposed us to things like education and art and music and sports, and just made us very well-rounded. And they were a blessing to us. And unfortunately, fast forwarding things, not too long after that, about 10 years into it, in our early 20s, we wound up losing both of them. My mother to bone marrow cancer. She lost her battle within a year. But to just watch the most bold and strongest woman that I've had in my life to deteriorate within a year was very tough to watch. And she left us with some great things. She left us, with that strength and with that characteristic. And about 3.5 years after that, my father was visiting his brother down in Florida on a retirement home where they drive golf carts around, and they wound up coming home one night and took a wrong turn, and he got thrown from the golf cart and hit his head in all the very soft areas, in which put him into an irreversible coma. And after a week of diagnosis and speaking to an unsurmountable amount of doctors, they said he wouldn't come out of it, and he wouldn't be the same person if he did. And me being the oldest, I had to make the executive decision to take him off of life support. I was 26, 27, around there. So that 3 year span was a lot for us. A lot of things were thrown at us, and post that era was a really dark period of time for me. I was trying to work through a lot of the trauma, but also drowning my emotions in other aspects to kind of suppress them and get rid of them, and not really pay attention to them. So I was kind of living these two different lives. I was living this elite athlete life during the day, and then hanging out with the wrong people and being in the wrong crowds on the evenings, and doing the wrong things, getting involved in things like alcohol and dabbling in drugs, and it was just a very dark period of time for me, and it came to a head in which one of those lives really had to die, or otherwise it was going to really kill me.
Hmm.
Um,
How did you get into track? Like, so at what age did this come into your life? Was this during foster care or when you're younger or after?
No, sports weren't really involved in my life during the foster care aspect of things. It wasn't until after I was adopted, and I was always very athletically inclined and blessed in that area. But when I got into track, it wasn't until my freshman year in high school. The the track and field coach had seen me on the football field, so I was playing football at the time as well, and they wanted me to come out, and so I wasn't really privy to coming out. It wasn't really on my radar. It wasn't a sport that I was interested in, and wound it up. My mother pushed me into it, and she said, just try it. It's something different. You've done every other sport underneath the sun. So I did, and my freshman year, I wound up going out and winning county championships as a freshman, and then just kind of built up over the years, and it's really grown on me as an athlete and as a base of just the sport overall of how the things that I do on the track translates to life in general.
So, yeah, so take us back to like when you were younger, dealing with everything with your family and then getting adopted by your family. Like, what was going through your mind like as a child? Because I would guess that, when you're going through trauma, you kind of see life a certain way. Were you easy to trust the new family? How did you view the world that was different, and how did your family eventually change your mindset?
Yeah, that's a great question. And at that particular juncture, the way I viewed the world was that everybody and everything around me was pretty much out to get me. I didn't trust anybody. Knowing what the word family meant was not in my vocabulary at the time. Um, and my my basic aspects of what I think are the essentials for everybody and are overlooked a lot nowadays are you know obviously I had an accelerated childhood where I had to be a father figure for my brother, and the only thing that mattered to us at that particular time was having a roof over our head, a hot meal to eat, and a warm bed to sleep in at night. If we had those three things, we were set. But transitioning into adoption and into that family, they were super receptive for us and super acceptant of us, just the whole family across the board, which just made our transition that much easier and enabling me to hand over some of these things that I was holding on to, like protection and provision, and being able to develop trust, which has been a long-term gain for me.
So when you say it's a long-term game, like what have you experienced with that?
The kids that come out of foster care, they're working through a lot of emotions, and it's always like peeling back the layers of an onion, and you're always going to have experiences, and the experiences that come up, whether they be whether they're through my high school years or even through these past 6 months, there's things that have come up, whether it be communication wise for me and how I was communicating and where that type of stuff kind of was rooted, and I had to pull those roots out, and going back to my childhood and going back to try to get some answers, which affect my relationships. So trust has always been a big factor for me, on the female side of things, because that correlates all the way back to my mother, and not having that trust built up with her when I was very young, and knowing that I wasn't protected and I wasn't provided for. But that also switched for me, and that narrative switched for me within these past 6 months, because I did have some conversations with um, a half brother that I had, and he really switched the narrative in which I was looking at her, which also switched the narrative across all the other points along the way of how I communicated and how I really projected and looked at my relationships and approached those relationships.
What switched the narrative? Because I find that really interesting is we could be thinking something our whole life and all of a sudden we have like that aha moment where, well,
Yeah.
you had one mindset. So what was the mindset you had and then what changed it to kind of help you start to undo that trauma?
The narrative in which it was playing out for me for such a long period of time was that my mother didn't care about us. She didn't protect us. She didn't provide for us. That was her doing, whether she was capable or not capable. There was no protection there for us. Now that was over, years and years of a lifespan. So when I did finally have the courage to start reaching out back to get some answers, all those doors were closed except one. So my birth mother had passed of cancer, I found out. So kind of reached out too late. And that was, particularly due to ego and had to do with things in the sense of, well, I didn't want to reach out to her because she didn't really care. She didn't reach out to us. But then I did find out we had a half brother, and my uncle had given me his contact information. It took me quite a while to reach out to him. And when we had that conversation, there was one thing in particular that really shifted everything for me. And that was that he said that they had a photo album and they were like best friends. Him and her were best friends. She would give the clothes off of her back for him. And that would kind of like struck me because that's not the perception in which I had with her. And he said that whenever they got to a certain page within this photo album, there was me and my brother that were on that page, and they stayed the longest on that page. And she would sit there and reminisce and talk about how she wanted to get us back together, how she wanted to, get everybody together and just, unify things and just have each other, just have some sort of, reconciliation and things like that. That immediately switched because there was a whole narrative in which I was saying that she didn't care, she didn't want to reach out, but yet she did want to reach out, she did care, and she did want to have a relationship with us, but she was being prevented from having that happen because of all of the red tape that goes on within foster care and the interactions and what the unstable situation was. So that was kind of like my aha moment in that sense, and really kind of gave me some really instant healing in that moment of, wow, like we do have these stories that we play out, and we do have these certain scenarios that we're playing out of the situations that unfolded in front of us, but yet we don't know what's going on behind the scenes half the time.
Yeah, you kind of see a whole world that opens up, and a lot of times our thoughts, they just run with whatever idea, and really we have to take a step back and realize there could be other reasons and different things to think about it, but it's not easy when that's all you ever knew. And before we get into like your book and where you are now, after you experienced this, when you were with the adopted family, you got into track, but then your parents passed away. So how did that impact you? You're finally starting to heal. You're finally starting to be like, okay, I can breathe. And then all of a sudden there's another trauma that I can't even imagine, what that feels like.
Yeah, there's, I've always been a survivor. I've always had that mechanism in the sense that I had to have it, at an early age. But in particular, surrounding that particular time of my life, it was, I just remember, just both my brother and I were just constantly thinking, it's like, how is this fair? Like it's just not fair to have like this kind of set of cards given to us and have our life almost come back around full circle to where we were at before we went into foster care, of really not having any sustainability or parent figures or leaders within our life, and then it all being taken away from us again. It was kind of that mentality, and it comes along with the trauma, and I mean, I think those are human questions that we ask ourselves, is like, why do these things happen to us, and why does this happen to us? And then that post that it became a situation for me to start figuring out, okay, well, am I asking myself the wrong questions? In the sense of, I'm asking myself, why does this happen to me? Why is it fair? Why is it not fair? Instead of, now the question that I ask is, how can I use this story as a catalyst and not a crutch? Mm-hmm. And I think that's the most important thing when we play out those narratives. and which I've had to work through on several different levels, and work through those aspects of what serves me in that particular time. We're all given a card of decks. We're all given this deck of cards where we fan it out every day. And I think a lot of us, what we do is that we're just pulling out those same cards because those are the easiest cards that we are defining ourselves with, and confining ourselves with, and putting ourselves in these boxes like, all right, well, this happened to me, so this is okay to be afraid, and this happened to me, so this is okay to feel like a victim. Instead, like, we need to get rid of those cards and throw them out. And I've had to do that a lot because they don't serve me and what I plan to do in impacting the kids and other families within this space as I move forward with the things that are on my platform.
So what was that moment you said before? You had two parts of you, the part that was going on the bad path, and then the part that was becoming a track star and wanting to help others. You said one of them had to die. What was that turning point?
Yeah, that was a tough night. I remember that like it was yesterday. It was, I was sitting out on my balcony, and it got to that point where I was just kind of like pleading myself with God, and I was just laying things out and for myself, and I was just like, look, I can't do this anymore, and it's either you take this from me and relieve this aspect from me, or just take me home and I'm out of here. And like I just can't do it anymore. I don't have the strength. I'm definitely I'm burning the candle at both ends. And in that moment, it may sound a little fairy tale-ish, but I was on my balcony, and I saw two shooting stars, one after another. And then ever since that day, things just started changing for me. It was just like, it was a detachment of everything, that whole aspect of life. I totally cut out cold turkey of everything, and didn't associate with that type of group anymore, and got myself refocused. And it was just one thing after another, taking little baby steps, and until it kind of just snowballed into the aspect of where I am now.
Yeah, which brings us to the book. How long ago was that shooting star moment, by the way? Like, was that like 10 years ago, or like 5 years ago, or?
I want to say about 3 years ago.
Oh, so that was 3 years ago where you just
Yeah.
decided to turn everything around.
Yeah. It was about 3 years ago. Yeah.
So it just shows how long it can sometimes that you're going through a battle to change. It doesn't just go away. So now we're to your book. How do you go from the shooting star to having this book? And what can you tell everyone what the book is about? I don't want to give it all away.
Yeah, sure. So the title of the book's called Good Morning Superstar. And I really wanted to take a simplistic approach to it and have something that people can incorporate in their day on a daily basis, and not really pull away from their day, but add to their day and set the tone for themselves. So there's 30 days, it's a 90-day book. And so you do it one chapter a day. There's a quote in there, and then there's a parable in which I've written that quote has impacted me. And then there's two questions, an empowering question and a take action question. And those are there because I'm a big believer on when we ask ourselves better questions, we get better results. And it's all about asking ourselves the right questions. So like I said, very easy read, but I believe very powerful, and something that people can implement. So yeah, it's it's my first book out. I'm excited about it. It's doing very well, but even a bigger portion of me is that I'm giving all the proceeds to impact foster families and aging out youth for a sustainable holiday.
The question that you always have, like, why did this happen to me? And changing the answer of, I don't want this to happen to me for no reason. Like, if this happened to me, then I want to help at least one other person, because then there's at least a reason that could make things better because of this happening in my life.
Yeah, without a doubt. And I think that those are the important things, that when we come to these very relevant places in our lives, and they are relevant, they're not like, hey, well, get over it type of deal. I mean, they are relevant acts that have been placed in our life for reasons. But a lot of us sometimes don't get over those reasons, and we get stuck. And that's where the kind of the hard work needs to be done. It's within the spaces in between those events and what happens in the future, and where we lie in between. It's those spaces that we play in can be the catalyst or the crutches.
Mm-hmm. And so your book's about setting intentions and creating habits. Can you give like 3 examples of what that it could be?
Yeah. So definitely like setting intentions, everything. It, First and foremost for me, it's about being present in every moment, and trying not to live in the past or play a, you know, try to predict the future. Those things are out of our control. What we can control is what we do and how we act and how we are present within this moment. And I think that is a very, very tough thing to do with the current climate of things that we're in, because with everything else that's thrown at us right now. So I really have been trying to just take that time and to always be aware of where I am, where is my thought process in this moment, what's most important and what's not most important. So that present factor is really all about the intention, and then the habits we build around that are really just you know trying to not get ahead of ourselves, and to try to take little steps to build the momentum. Because as humans, we want progression. We want to see progress. Otherwise, we start to give up and we don't want any more. And you're going to hit that plateau sometimes, and you're going to have to push a little harder sometimes in order to move the needle in some areas. But I think it's all about the little aspects and what little things, and with what you have, with what the resources that you have in that particular moment, what you can do to move forward and move forward in the areas that are most important to you, and just really have blinders on and have a good filter system right now. You need to have a good filter system of what you let within your frame of what you absorb, what you want to see on a daily basis, how you interact with social media and all that stuff. We need to have good filters because it directly correlates and impacts us internally.
Exactly. And I was going to ask you your biggest tip, but before I let you go and we tell people where they can find you in your book, where are you like today? Like, how did you become the track star? Like, what is like your proudest accomplishment in that regard? Obviously, overcoming everything is your proudest accomplishment. But
Yeah. I think Olympic trials and everything, and just competing in on a level that there's so many great athletes, and to compete in some of the nations and world's biggest meets. Just to be able to broaden my horizon in that area of sports, but also to be able to really use what I've done on the track and how it translates off the track. I think that those skills are invaluable for me right now, and they're really coming to fruition and helping me out in all the projects and everything else that's coming out.
that's absolutely amazing. I really appreciate you being here today, sharing the story, being real of how it's we get out of bed every day and we just always have to try to be better. Can you let everyone know where they can find your book and where they can find you?
Sure. Yeah. So you can get the book anywhere you buy your books. Amazon, Barnes and Noble, or anything like that. You can find me on any social media. Instagram, I'm on at Stevie B. So STEVIEY_B. And then also something else that's coming out. My organization launching next year. Go to fosteringsuccess.co. It's all about reformation within the adoption and foster care space, and providing skills and leadership programs and things like that for these kids so that they are moving in the right direction.
That's absolutely amazing. I'm going to link everything below so they can follow and get involved. I just want to thank you again for coming on my show today. It's so inspiring. I know it's healing for me, and I know it will be healing for everybody who listens. So thank you so much for being here today.
I appreciate you having me, and you have such a great platform, so keep inspiring other people.
Thank you. And thank you, everyone, for watching. We'll see you next time. Bye.